Hey looters, Flutes here, joined by Shard, Tim, once again. We're going to talk today about our own versions, revisions of the Battle Rager Barbarian, how we think it could be improved if anyone wants to play that subclass. Today on Flutes Loot.
Tim here from Shard. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this. We're going in blind, aren't we? I don't think we've talked really about our revisions in advance, so it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out.
Shard and I just kind of said, let's make our own revisions and not like coordinate or anything. So we're just going to see what each other's versions look like. The Battle Rager is from the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, and it's not the most popular subclass. It's got a few design flaws as well as some underwhelming features, especially compared to subclasses that come out these days. Let's just jump into it. So here on Flutes Loot, I've got this article. It's going to be publishing here shortly, so this is a little behind the scenes sneak peek of the Battle Rager Barbarian fix that I came up with. My philosophy with it was basically I wanted to kind of make it sort of like the Bristleback hero from Dota 2, if anyone's played that, where you kind of punish people for attacking you, and you're kind of like the Juggernaut as well from the X-Men comic books and movies, where you're just kind of like this unstoppable force when you're charging ahead. And so I also kept in mind that kind of the optimal way to build a barbarian typically is to take Polearm Master to get reach and a bonus action attack, as well as Great Weapon Master for plus 10 damage and reckless attack to help you get advantage and hopefully land those minus 5s to get plus 10 damage and all that stuff. And so I wanted it to hopefully kind of stand up to that standard and almost discourage people from just stacking this revision of mine with the Polearm Master, Great Weapon Master. That's the way I approached this, at least. People might disagree with me on that, but yeah, that's basically how it went. So first up, there's the restriction of it being for dwarves only, but in the Skag book where it's printed, it even says like this is optional. And so I'm not really worried about changing that, because I think this would basically get the same treatment as the Blade Singer, where it's not limited to elves anymore, but the Battle Rager is usually limited to dwarves. Let's not limit it to dwarves anymore. And so I approached this with the assumption that you don't have to be a dwarf to be a Battle Rager. So the way that I format this is the bold text is what the feature actually is, and the italicized bold text is what I changed or added. You gain the ability to use spiked armor as a simple melee weapon. When you use the attack action while you are wearing spiked armor and you are raging, you can make one additional melee attack with your armor spikes against a target within 5 feet of you as part of the attack action. What I did there was I clarified that it's a simple melee weapon so that it's clear how this sort of spiked armor attack will interact with other game mechanics. And then I said instead of it taking up your bonus action, it's just part of you doing the attack action, so it's an additional attack. This is similar to the Beast Barbarian when it grows claws when it ranges, where it just gets an extra claw attack. So the Battle Rager just gets an extra armor attack when it uses the attack action, and it's a 5-foot reach. And then I also added to the damage you can do when you grapple people with this. So while you're wearing spiked armor, I clarified that as well. You can deal piercing damage equal to your proficiency bonus instead of just a flat rate when the grapple succeeds. And I made it so when a creature attempts to break free from your grapple, you do the damage again if they fail. So it's not just when you start the grapple. Additionally, one of the weird parts about the Battle Rager is it doesn't really say how you get spiked armor. And so I did kind of bake into it that you get proficiency with Smith's tools or Leatherworker's tools, your choice. And then down here with the spiked armor itself, I clarified what it would cost to craft it yourself if you weren't just buying it. At level 6, I actually switched around the level 10 and level 6 features. And so now at level 6, Battle Rager Charge is what you get. I made it leveled lower, as I said, and I reworked it. So at 6th level, you can dash as a bonus action while you are raging. Normally, this is at 10th level, you can dash as a bonus action, which I thought was very unsatisfying, especially because rogues can dash as a bonus action at level 2, among other things with their bonus action. So I decided to kind of feed into that Cain Marko Juggernaut archetype where when you're dashing, let's do some cool stuff. So I said, when you use the dash action, you do not provoke opportunity attacks, and you can move through the spaces occupied by other creatures that are the same size as you or smaller, as if they were difficult terrain. If you end your turn in a space occupied by another creature, and here I'm just doing the like where you end your turn legalese, I guess. My thought process with that was that I didn't want anyone to like dash into someone else's space and then be able to kind of game the system to move through like a whole bunch more enemies to a more advantageous position. Let's have you backtrack to which space you were in that was unoccupied most recently before you occupied the space of another creature. When you move through them, this is the second part I added, you deal piercing damage equal to your proficiency bonus to any creature whose space you move through when you dash in this way. You can deal damage to a creature in this way with Battle Rager charge once per round. So basically, bonus action to dash, you can move through people of similar or smaller size to you as if difficult terrain, and as you do so, you deal damage to them as your spiked armor pierces them as you move through them.
No, I like that. It's quite a cool feature. I think the restriction to once a round is probably required.
Yeah, I kind of took inspiration from that new, I think it's called Chardelin's Charge, that Fizban's Treasury of Dragons spell where you basically like leave a wake of fire and you dash around. So I kind of used that as a little bit of inspiration for a similar mechanic. But yeah, there's not really anything in the game that makes you like dash through people that I can think of off the top of my head. Maybe there's a few things, but other than just like shoving people. And so at level 10, Reckless Abandon, which used to be level 6, I beefed this up a little bit as well. Beginning at 6th level, your reckless flurry of attacks and spikes makes it difficult for enemies to get a clean hit on you. I added that flavor text to kind of make it clear what we're doing with this feature. So when you use Reckless Attack while raging and wearing spiked armor, you also gain temporary hit points equal to your Constitution modifier, minimum 1. So that's all as it was before, and this is what I added. You also benefit from half cover until the start of your turn after you use Reckless Attack while you continue raging and are not incapacitated. So what I did here was I said, okay, you're wearing armor as a barbarian. What's something cool we could do with it? And when you're reckless attacking, I like that you gain these temporary hit points, and I thought about doing something where you like deal the temporary hit points as damage, or people hurt themselves while you have temporary hit points, something like that. But I settled on this because it seemed a little bit more simple, I suppose, where you're just a flurry of spikes when you're attacking. So you might be attacking recklessly, giving people advantage to attack you, but you also gain cover from just all these spikes and this armor that you're wearing. And so it's just a +2 to armor class and a +2 to dexterity saving throws. It's not huge, but I like that recent subclass designs of 5th edition have included like, oh, this feature gives you half cover, instead of just saying you get +2 to armor class. Because if you just say you get +2 to armor class, then it stacks with other things, and it stacks and it stacks and it stacks, and people can multi-class and do all kinds of weird stuff with it. But if you just say half cover, then 3 subclasses you multi-class into that all give half cover don't stack. It's all just a flat +2. So I thought that was a cool way to do it. And then the last one, I reworked and renamed the level 14, let's call it the capstone for this subclass. I named it Spiked Juggernaut. What it normally does is when a creature within 5 feet of you hits you with a melee attack, the attacker takes 3 piercing damage if you are raging, aren't incapacitated, and are wearing spiked armor. So this is obviously like pretty underwhelming for a 14th level ability. It's unclear whether the 3 piercing damage is like even going to be very useful, even whether it's magical or anything like that. It's not magical. I thought about just beefing up the damage or doing something else, but I ended up settling on this, so here's what I added. Additionally, all melee attacks you make against targets within 5 feet of you deal 3 additional piercing damage while you are wearing spiked armor and raging. You may also add this extra damage to creatures you damage while moving through their space with the dash action. Basically, I said you're using your spikes offensively. Let's add +3 damage from your armor to all your attacks. So if you attack with a sword, 1, 2, that's 6 additional damage for the 2 attacks. And then if you do your additional attack with your armor, that also gets 3 additional damage. And then if you dash through people, your proficiency bonus is going to be, I think, +5 at level 14, and then later +6. You'll add 3 to that, so you'll deal 8 damage at level 14 as you dash through people. It's still not the most crazy powerful capstone. I kind of went conservative with this, but I like when there's like a capstone for a subclass that kind of feeds into and builds upon what already was occurring in the subclass features. And so this is what I ended up going with.
No, I think that's clear as well. I think I've done something fairly similar, which is to beef up the level 14 features a bit, to make it feel a bit more like a capstone. I've done it in a slightly different way. So you'll see when you see mine, you'll see that I've got a slightly different theme that runs through mine. But I was following pretty much the same idea as you think. So I think my approach was similar to yours in terms of the overall thinking that was going behind tweaking the Battle Rager. I wanted to do something where we can take the existing features but kind of actually make them work or make them more effective at what they do. There was one thing I particularly didn't like about the original Battle Rager design, and I think it's shared by a lot of the barbarians, is that a lot of the features are tied to rage. And so if you don't have any rages left, suddenly you don't really have that many features. So what I've tried to do is to decouple a little bit, or to give the Battle Rager something that they can do when they're not raging with their feature, and then beef it up a little bit while they were actually raging. And so that was one of the kind of design tweaks that I put in all the way through. So very similar to you, I started off with them gaining proficiency in Smith's tools and Leatherworkers tools. I felt it was appropriate that the Battle Rager could actually make their own armor as well. As per the kind of the theme in Tasha's these days, I said if you've already got proficiency in either of these, then you can gain proficiency in something else instead, and so you don't feel like you've wasted a background feature or something. And then you gain the ability to both make and wear Battle Rager armor. So during a long rest, you can convert any suit of non-magical or magical, light or medium armor to Battle Rager armor. The armor will retain all its original properties, including enchantments and magical effects, if any. You can only have one suit of Battle Rager armor at any time. Any previous suit of Battle Rager armor will lose its special properties if you create a new one. So what I thought there was it might be fun if you do pick up a magical suit of armor that's quite cool, to be able to also convert that and make that into your Battle Rager armor as well. And I've built this into some of the other features that come along a bit later. As with you, I thought limiting it to dwarves only. I didn't like the limit to dwarves only. So in the same way that you did, I've given it a tweak for dwarves. So Battle Ragers of Dwarven descent have a special affinity for this barbarian path. A Dwarven Battle Rager can convert a suit of magical or non-magical heavy armor to Battle Rager armor. This suit of armor will retain all its original properties, except that it will count as medium armor for all of your barbarian abilities. So I thought this would give your Dwarven Battle Rager just a little bit more beefiness when it came to them raging, and it'll be the one heavy armor wearing barbarian on the battlefield. So if you wanted to go dwarf, you're going to get a little bit of a bonus. I also put in a nice little flavor bit here. It's not possible for your Battle Rager armor to be removed without your consent. I figured it would be quite difficult for anybody to be able to take it off, even if you're unconscious. So I thought that would be you get to keep it on. You get to keep your weapon at all times, basically. So while wearing Battle Rager armor, Battle Ragers gain a number of benefits. You can make special attacks with your armor spikes, which I call armor strikes. And these armor strikes count as simple melee weapons that do 1d8 piercing damage, and use your strength modifier for the hit and damage rolls. If your armor is magical, these strikes will also count as magical, and any bonuses to the enchantment level of the armor will be applied to these strikes. So +1 armor will strike as a +1 weapon for the purposes of attack and damage rolls. So this is linking back into the previous feature where you can actually make an enchanted suit of armor into your Battle Rager armor, and then you can actually use that to upgrade your weapon strikes with your armor as you move forward. You can choose to make unarmed strikes with armor strikes instead. So that just feeds into any feature where unarmed strikes are allowed. You can now replace those with your armor strikes. While raging, you can make a bonus action armor strike. That's the original feature. But now what I'm saying is that if you want to just use armor strikes for your main attacks as well, they will count as a 1d8 plus something if you've got magical armor, and then you'll get quite an impactful bonus action armor strike, which will also be a 1d8 plus your strength modifiers, plus any enchantment modifiers, plus rage as well. So it's quite an impactful bonus action. And I think similarly to you, I didn't want to kind of nerf the idea of using something like polearm muster. So I think you could still use the polearm and use polearm muster with this if you wanted to, but this gives you a viable alternative as well. So your main attacks won't do as much damage as a polearm, but your bonus action will be a little bit stronger. When you successfully grapple a creature, or a creature successfully grapples, engulfs, or swallows you, the creature takes damage equal to an armor strike. So basically you roll a dice and see how much damage they're going to take. And any creature you have grappled at the start of your turn takes 1d8 damage. So that was one of the original features, and I beefed it up just a tiny bit. But I just thought that this was kind of fun because there are some creatures out there that can actually try and swallow you whole. And I thought the idea of swallowing a spiked Battle Rager should be quite dangerous. So you'll take some damage if you try and do that. And I added one little fillip to kind of the social arena for the Battle Rager, gave them one kind of social skill. So while you're wearing your armor, you gain proficiency in intimidation if you don't already have it. And while raging, you have advantage on intimidation skill checks. So I thought, even out of combat, if you want to use up a rage and get really angry at somebody and bounce up and down in your spiky armor, you'll get intimidation with advantage on that. So one thing that you can do out of combat, basically. So I left the order the same way it was originally, with Reckless Abandon coming in at 6th level. And so I beefed up a little bit the temporary HP for this. So you gain temporary HP equal to 3 plus your Constitution modifier when you start your Reckless attack. And I have removed the link to Rage here. So what I'm saying is that you can use this even if you're not raging. So if you use it, your Reckless attack while not raging, you can still get your temporary hit points. If you're wearing Battle Rager armor with an enchantment of +1 or greater, you also add this enchantment level to the temporary HP gain. So an extra +1 or +2 temporary hit points. While raging, you can also grant this temporary HP up to five creatures of your choice within 30 feet of you. You can do this a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all uses on a long rest. So I just thought it'd be nice to have a little party-friendly feature here, just to be able to get a little bit of temporary hit points to your teammates while you're raging. So the Battle Rager charge. So I wanted to do the similar thing to what you suggested, which was to give a bit more beef to the dash that you get as a bonus action. Essentially, what I've done is I've built in the charger feat into the Battle Rager charge, so you kind of get the charger feat for free at 10th level. So if you move at least 10 feet in a straight line as part of this dash, you can. I also removed it from rage, so you can now dash as a bonus action, full stop. Yeah. And then if you move at least 10 feet, you can include your bonus action armor strike as part of this bonus action. You add a +5 bonus to the damage roll for this attack if you are raging and wearing Battle Rager armor. And so you get an extra bonus if you manage to hit with this bonus action armor strike at the end of your dash. Or you can make a grapple attempt as part of this bonus action, because normally that takes one of your attacks from your attack action. So you, again, because I already had a little bit of extra damage when you make a grapple attempt or succeed on a grapple attempt, you get an extra bonus to that damage on a successful grapple if you're raging and wearing the Battle Rager armor again. Or you can make a shove attempt as part of this bonus action, shoving an enemy creature up to 10 feet away if successful, up to 20 feet if you're raging. So again, a little bit of a bonus for the raging again. And then my Spike Retribution at 14th level. An attacker within 5 feet who hits you will now get piercing damage equal to your strength modifier in retaliation from your Battle Rager armor. So I made 2 changes to the original. I linked it to strength modifier rather than constitution. Because the Battle Rage or the Barbarian in general, if you go Barbarian all the way, you can actually get your strength modifier up by a couple of points at 20th level. You get a big boost to strength. And I also decoupled it again from Rage. So now if anybody hits you, even whether or not you're raging, they will get some piercing damage. And again, this will be magical damage if you're wearing magical armor. And while raging, you can choose to make this retaliatory damage equal to one of your armor strikes instead. So when you rage up, you can then roll your d8 with all of your bonuses and apply that as retaliatory damage instead. So that's how I wrapped up mine.
I love your revision. The first thing that stood out to me that I adore is how you dealt with one of the problems, which is the Battle Rager. Yeah, they can make their spiked armor, but if they find magical armor or something cool, they just couldn't use it. But you made it so they can convert armor into their spiked armor, and I love that. I think if I were to say what my favorite thing from your revision is, I think it's that. That's awesome. And I love that you threw in the part about, like, if you're swallowed and if someone tries to grapple you, like, they also get hurt. That seems so obvious now, and I missed that. That's perfect.
Yeah, I enjoyed your idea of dashing and doing some actual damage while you're moving. I think that was quite good fun as well. Maybe something that we could even incorporate into that. I love that idea of your very movement actually hurting people. I think it's a similar concept. Is that it's pretty dangerous to be around this battle rager in battle.
Another thing I like that you did is you actually gave a name to the attack you make with spiked armor, which is armor strikes, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, giving it a name, I think that's important. And while I did say like, yeah, it counts as a simple melee weapon or whatever, I love that you gave it a name. I'm not sure yet. I think I'm still gonna keep the armor strike as part of the attack action, so their bonus action is still freed up to do like the dash later on. I'll have to think about that. And the thing I often debate with myself and Barbarian revisions is whether to decouple things from rage. And so I kind of like that I did the like keep the rage and you did the decouple version, because it's something I debated a lot in my revision, and I'm kind of glad that we didn't just do the same thing. I think I'm going to at least decouple like maybe 2 of the features from raging, because one thing I like about the Beast Barbarian is that its level 6 feature, like where you just get an adaptation, is just all the time. It's not based on when you're raging, and I really enjoy that, especially because you do feel that when you play a barbarian of like trying to ration your rages, and if you don't get any features when you're not raging, it can feel kind of sad.
Yeah, I mean, you don't get that many rages in a day, at least not until you get to unlimited. 20th level. So, it depends, I guess, on how your DM is running an adventuring day. But if they're doing, the recommended sort of couple of short rests and maybe half a dozen encounters in a day, 4 to 6, early on, you're not actually going to be able to rage in every encounter. And even later on, you might be able to get a rage in every encounter towards higher levels of play. And I just thought it would be quite nice to find a little bit of something that the barbarian can still get a benefit from in combat when they're not raging. They get huge benefits anyway when they rage. And I think it's such a fundamental feature, and it's one of the reasons why I kind of beefed it up a bit more, so that when you do rage, you do get that little bit extra, and so, which I think is very appropriate, especially if you're a spiked wrecking ball like this one is.
Yeah, spiked wrecking ball. That's a good way to look at it. And when you get into like deep optimization stuff, the barbarian isn't really a top choice for people, and so I think it's okay to let him loosen up and get out of that rage mentality. I use the Beast Barbarian as an example a lot because I'm playing one right now, and there's been a few scenarios. We're playing Rime of the Frost Maiden, and sometimes we're in scenarios where we keep finding like little skirmishes with enemies, and I have to decide whether I'm going to rage in that fight or not. And sometimes I just run up and I dodge, and I just kind of act as the meat shield while everyone else with their ranged attacks, because I'm like the melee person. I definitely see the value in decoupling from rage and giving them something else to do, because that's a lot of fun to have other options. So I love that. I noticed your Reckless Abandon, you also made, instead of just your Constitution modifier, you said 3+. I think that's cool. And I like that you have the option with proficiency bonus number of times to add that temporary hit HP to some of your allies. And I like that you enhanced it with, if you have like an enchanted suit of armor. I really like that your change to allow you to convert magical armor into your spiked armor, which is felt throughout your whole revision design. That it enhanced all of the abilities. Like, I really loved that.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if there might be the odd suit of armor out there or two that could break this feature, but I don't think so. I haven't come across any. But I think some of the armor you find is magical without an enchantment, but that would still at least allow you to make magical strikes. And so I thought you could be quite self-sufficient as this kind of barbarian, which is one of the things that was quite nice. I think the Beast Barbarian is similar, because you can turn on your beast features and still get magical attacks. Whereas most barbarians, I think, if they lose their weapons for some reason, will struggle. Whereas this one, it's very difficult to get your armor off you.
Yeah.
So you've got your weapons with you pretty much at all time. It's one of the reasons why I added that in.
Yeah.
So that you can't have it removed.
I like that also gives the impression that you are like strapped in to this type of armor. Like, again, I bring up the Juggernaut,
sleeping
you know.
in it.
Yeah, you're sleeping in it. You're just like people can just like barely see your eyes. Like I don't know, like it's an intense picture.
It reminds me a bit of Thibault Pwent from the battle rager from the Dark Elf Drizzt Do'Urden books. I don't know if you know the character, but he was a notoriously smelly battle rager. You know, he basically slept in his armor and never took it off, and I think that was, he had a kind of miasma around him on the battlefield, and that was distracting people a bit more than anything else, I think.
No, I'm glad you shared that. I'm not as familiar with the peripheral characters of Drizzt, and so that's really cool to hear that there's a character that was a battle rager. I just remembered, I also love that you gave intimidation proficiency and advantage while you're raging. That just feels right to me. I mean, just the image of this type of barbarian raging coming at you as a spiked wrecking ball like we talked about. Let's talk about the last feature. Can you scroll down to yours? I like that you made this, again, kind of tie into your armor strikes and whether you're wearing magical armor or not.
Yeah, I think that's going to be quite impactful. I was wondering if that might actually be a bit too strong, because it's a D8, and then it's going to be plus your strength modifier, yeah, because it's an armor strike will include your ability modifier. And your rage damage plus additional bonus damage if you've got magical armor on. So it's it's like a full attack, basically.
Yeah.
But if you're attacking, our spiked wrecking ball while he's raging, then you kind of deserve what you get, really. So I thought this is quite an
I picture a Hydra like trying to attack him like 8 times and just like trying to swallow him and just having a horrible time.
Yeah, I can imagine it being a difficult fight for a Hydra, this one. The only thing I didn't like about this was that you're supposed to be the tank, and this is actually is almost incentivizing creatures not to hit you, which is not really the point of the tank. But then I suppose with your positioning, you should be able to put yourself, especially with your dash that you get as well, you should be able to put yourself in the line of fire and make it very difficult for people to get around you and get to your party members.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's something I thought about, of the whole concept of, because people always say like reckless attack is supposed to make people attack you because they have advantage. I don't really care about that like design philosophy, but I do like the idea of this battle rager being able to just punish people for attacking them. And sometimes being a tank isn't just about making people want to attack you, right? It's about locking down people like they're locked in a room with you, And so I think like, especially if you paired this with like the sentinel feat or something, if you get up to somebody and they're like, I don't want to attack you, I'm going to the other guy, they try to move away from you, you can sentinel, make them stop. And also, like you said, the dashing, you get where you need to go and you just lock someone down and you say, welcome to the Thunderdome, Bonesaw is ready, and they're just like stuck with you. I love that imagery. And so even though you're not like a tank in the sense that people want to attack you and you can soak up damage, I think you can still fulfill a good control role.
I think so as well. And the classic wizard tactic of trapping somebody into a force cage with the barbarian.
Yeah.
That's going to work super well with this guy. Yeah. So.
And kudos to you for, you get a benefit and then it's a greater benefit when you're raging. So it's not binary of like either you get it or you don't based on whether you're raging. It's you get a benefit and you do it even more, hit harder when you're raging. I think that's really smart, and I think that's something I'm going to try to remember when I'm doing any sort of barbarian design, is a greater than version when you're raging. I think that's inspired.
Yeah, no, it's something that frustrates me about barbarian play is that, a lot of the time you're a slightly worse fighter because you get better than a fighter in most circumstances when you're raging. Mm-hmm. But using reckless attack outside of rage can be quite difficult sometimes, unless you're one-on-one with an enemy. I have the same criticism of many of the monk subclasses, which is, all of their features are tied to key points, and then when you run out of key points, you don't have any subclass features, mm-hmm. And you will run out, because they're a limited resource. Same with rages, they're a limited resource. So, but yeah, and I thought it would be nice to have at least one thing that a barbarian can use their rage for outside of combat. And so, if you're having a social interaction day, you can still contribute as a barbarian. not for long, because I think you lose your rage if you don't attack people. So, but you can at least get one round of heavy intimidation on somebody out of a rage. I didn't link this to charisma. It's just intimidation. I know some DMs do allow strong characters to potentially use strength intimidation checks. So I thought I'd leave that open, and then if a DM wants to use strength, I think that would play into the barbarian strength as well.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for our revisions here. We'd love to hear your own thoughts on it too, because the great thing about us being just amateur revisionists is we don't have to publish it and be stuck with it, right? And so if we hear other ideas that are cool or inspired, we'd love to add them to our own ideas. So add them in the comment section. You can go to the article itself or here on the video and let us know your thoughts.
And if somebody actually gets around to playtesting a Battle Rager using one of our revisions, we'd love to hear about that as well, to see how it actually goes in actual play.
Yeah, that's part of the fun of making a revision, is people actually using it and seeing how it goes. So we'd love to get that kind of feedback. All right, so Thank you, Shard, for joining me today. Hope you have a good rest of your day, and hope everyone has a good adventure this weekend. We'll see you later. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.